And welcome everybody to the Huddle, KON9 streaming sports talk show. We come to you every week at this time on all the KON9 streaming platforms. I'm sports director Jason Barr, joined as always by Pat Paris. Pat, good afternoon. How are you today?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, looking forward to this.
All right, terrific. We'll bring in our today's guest, and he is Justin Spears of Spears and Ali on the mornings of ESPN Radio Tucson. Also a sports writer, longtime sports writer now, I'd say, for the Arizona Daily Star. Justin, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on the Huddle.
Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for having me. Always appreciate it.
All right, so I thought we'd do a little potpourri, a little rapid fire, maybe every 3 to 4 minutes, kind of go through a certain topic, and I came up with this rundown here. And we're going to start, Justin, with the Arizona men's basketball roster, and I'm going to bring something up here that actually has a projected roster for next year, and you're going to see here it's got a couple of question marks, in the roster. Yeah, Kylan Boswell. Yeah, KJ Lewis. Yeah, Umar Ballo. But who else, Justin, do you see in that roster? And are you concerned sitting here on May 2nd as we record this that Arizona has so few players at this time?
Yeah, I think it's a little concerning right now, especially when you look at the number of transfers that Arizona pursued, and they're not going to Arizona. A couple of guys have left Gonzaga. Obviously, the big one is Ryan Nembhard. And you had Ryan Nembhard on campus for about 4 to 5 days. And everyone thought that it was a lock that Ryan Nembhard would come to Arizona. But then Gonzaga swoops in, and Mark Few kind of does his good buddy Tommy Lloyd wrong and steals his top recruit. So two guys that have ties to Tommy Lloyd, they decided to go elsewhere. You had Latrell Whitesell from Cal State Fullerton. He was another, highly rated transfer portal prospect, and he cancels his visit to the University of Arizona and decides to commit to Alabama. So it's concerning that a lot of these guys that Arizona they're going after, and they're deciding to go to other schools. But I don't think that Tommy Lloyd and his staff are ready to push the panic button just yet, because one thing about Jack Murphy and Tommy Lloyd is that they are both embedded in Europe. And there are a lot of prospects over there that we just may not know about who could come over and really impact Arizona. I remember Lauri Markkanen, once upon a time, was kind of an unknown prospect coming out of Finland, and then he ended up becoming a top 10 pick and an all-star. Look at this past season, what Lauri Markkanen was able to do in the NBA. So there's still the European market, and plus the transfer portal market, there's still a bunch of players out there. And the transfer portal, you look at what happened with Arizona last year, Cedric Henderson and Courtney Ramey, these were kind of late newcomers for Arizona last year via the transfer portal. So it's a little concerning when you look at from a 40,000-foot perspective in the air. But I think Tommy Lloyd and his staff, they have a plan in place, and I think they could create a roster that could at least contend in the Pac-12.
Yeah, and you just mentioned it too, Justin. When the NBA draft, we get close to the NBA draft, and these guys that have put their names out there and then pull themselves back, and maybe in the transfer portal, because that's what happened last year. Arizona was able to get a guy that way, and then Pelle Larsson would be in that same boat, but he's not in the transfer portal. Is there a chance? And I think there's a pretty good chance. But what are your thoughts about Pelle Larsson still coming back?
Yeah, Pelle Larsson, he has the framework to be an NBA player. But I was very surprised to see him decide that he's going to test the NBA draft waters. But with that being said, it doesn't hurt to test those waters, and he could still be able to come back. And I think Pelle learned a lot this past season, because he's the defending Pac-12 Sixth Man of the Year. But with Dalen Terry going to the NBA, he took on a larger role and really struggled. And so Tommy Lloyd made the executive decision, or I wouldn't say executive decision. He actually approached both Cedric and Pelle halfway through the year, and both of them decided to make that switch, which I think really speaks to the maturity of a guy like Pelle Larsson. But last year in the FIBA Euro Cup qualifiers, he was guarding Luka Doncic. He shouldered the responsibility of guarding one of the top players in the world, and so you like to see that out of a guy like that. But is Pelle Larsson NBA ready at this point? No, I don't think so. I think coming back another season would really do him well, and I think Pelle could be the leader on, one of the top teams on the West Coast. But, he's got an NBA framework, but man, he's got a lot of things that he needs to work on. And also, I think, right there in the picture that we're looking at, Zulus Tubelis right there. I think that he's probably going to stick around in the NBA draft. I don't agree with it. I think that, Azuolas Tubelis has the opportunity to come back and be a Pac-12 Player of the Year. I thought he sealed it up last year after his 40-point game against Oregon, but Jaime Jaquez in the last month really turned it up and kind of stole it from him. But I think if Azuolas Tubelis can come back, get his 4th year under his belt, graduate, also become Pac-12 Player of the Year, and also a unanimous All-American, I think it can really boost his draft stock. And we're talking about Azuolas Tubelis maybe being a late first rounder as opposed to a mid-second rounder.
Oh, yeah. Your coworker, Greg Canson, actually a pretty scathing article on Azuolas Tubelis and where his draft stock is and why it's so low and him not being able to hit the 3. But anyway, we've got to move on, and let's keep it going now with Arizona football. Justin, no players selected in the NFL draft for the 2nd straight year for the Wildcats. This one I'm going to give Jedd Fisch a pass here. The type of player who was selected here this season would be somebody who was brought in 3 years ago. Jedd Fisch wasn't here to bring anybody in 3 years ago. To me, Jedd Fisch gets a pass. It almost makes what he did this past season, going 5-7, even more remarkable that he had no NFL players on the team. I know 3 guys just have signed undrafted free agents, but still, you got no Wildcats selected for 2 years in a row in the NFL draft.
And last year, Jedd Fisch tweeted, "Never again," that this would happen. Never again would Arizona get shut out of the NFL draft. And it happened again. But there's an asterisk next to this one, because I had every reason to believe that Jordan Morgan was going to go to the NFL draft after this year. And
that's a good point.
Jordan Morgan was kind of viewed as a guy who could potentially be a first-round pick. He was certainly going to be a day 2 guy. After talking with several people who are connected to the NFL, tied with Jordan Morgan, they really thought he's going to be a day 2 prospect. But that season-ending ACL injury kept him from preparing for the draft. He didn't have a pro day. He couldn't go to the combine. And so when you're unable to do these type of things, especially when you're an offensive lineman, you're going to go from a day 2 guy to now a 5th or a 6th round pick. And Jordan Morgan, he's thinking long-term here. I come back for another season. I'm an all Pac-12 offensive lineman. I improve my draft stock once again. I show that I'm one of the top offensive linemen on the West Coast. Now we're talking about Jordan Morgan once again being back in the picture of being a first-round pick. Jacob Cowing is another prospect. When we talk about the players who could have left this year for Arizona, I would have assumed Dorian Singer and T-Mac. These guys say Jacob Cowing goes to the NFL draft. Instead, Dorian Singer transfers to USC. Jacob Cowing is taking over as the Dorian Singer role, and who's also going to get a bunch of special teams reps and, again, continue to improve that draft stock. But Jacob Cowing was the guy who I thought would have been a 4th rounder or 3rd rounder type of guy. So there's a lot of players. Michael Wiley, another great running back who could have been drafted. Tanner McLaughlin next year. I mean, he's going to be draft eligible. Great tight end, set the most yards by tight end since Rob Gronkowski. So there are plenty of names for next season where you can really look at and say, okay, these guys are going to get drafted. Yes, they've been shut out the last couple of seasons, which hasn't happened since 03 and 04. And if you think about during that time, that was right when Mike Stoops was taking over, and all the John Malkovich players were starting to kind of, flood out there. Now that you've been there for 3 seasons, that's when you're going to start to see the NFL prospects. And now that Jedd Fisch is going into year 3, I think it's safe to say that Arizona won't get shut out in the NFL draft again.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. Justin Spears, our guest here on the Huddle. And Justin, this is not only an Arizona issue with not having anybody drafted, but the Pac-12 overall ends up being, once again, the 5th out of the Power 5 conferences in the number of guys drafted. Arizona should maybe move right up to near the top of that list with this next year's class when that happens. But, it still gets back to that Pac-12 problem with football, in my estimation, too.
Yeah, and it's a reflection on recruiting over the last several years. I mean, think about how many of the top West Coast guys have gone on to play at Alabama or Tennessee. They're all going to the SEC and that side of the country. So it's very unfortunate because USC they're starting to come back to being USC. Now that Lincoln Riley is there, they're going to be pumping out NFL prospects year after year, but they're going to be doing it while they're in the Big Ten. And so that's just the unfortunate part about the whole conference realignment thing with the Pac-12, because just when it's starting to get good again for the conference, and you have a flagship program who's carrying the torch again, like a USC, which they did in the 2000s with Pete Carroll. Unfortunately, now that USC is USC again, they're going to be in the Big 12, and they're going to be pumping out NFL prospects, but it's all going to be in the Big 10, and the Pac-12 is going to get left behind. It's a sad situation.
Well, one player who did leave and went to Texas, of course, Bijan Robinson, 8th overall in the NFL draft with the Atlanta Falcons. Justin, you're somebody who's been close to Bijan for a long time. I thought it was really interesting. I was watching the NFL draft, and I heard Reese Davis on ESPN say in another era, Bijan could have gone number 1 overall. It made me think a second that maybe that was even a possibility. Your thoughts on Bijan Robinson? I know you consider him the best high school player ever in Tucson, certainly that we've seen, and him going number 8 in the fit with him in the Atlanta Falcons.
I think it's a really a surprising pick to have Bijan go number 8. I was all in on Philadelphia at number 10, drafting him, putting him right in the middle of that great offense with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, and you have A.J. Brown, you have Dallas Goedert, you have arguably the best offensive line in the league. You put a weapon like Bijan Robinson in that Philadelphia offense, it just would have been way too perfect. And we're talking about Philadelphia going back to the Super Bowl, and Tucson's very own Bijan Robinson, going from a guy here at South Point Catholic to all of a sudden playing the Super Bowl and having an impact. But the Atlanta Falcons, when they were going through the pre-draft process, they had an interview with him in Austin, Texas. They went to this famous barbecue restaurant, Terry Black's, and Arthur Smith and I forgot who the player is that currently plays for the Falcons, but was Bijan's teammate at Texas. They went out to the restaurant, and just from that conversation, from that one meal, they realized this is our guy. The high character person that Bijan is, the way that he understands football and is such a playmaker, but he's also a world-class human being. The Falcons wanted to build their franchise around that. And they already have a lot of great young offensive players like Drake London out of USC is a great wide receiver. Kyle Pitts, who is kind of a do-it-all tight end. Desmond Ridder, we still need to see what he can do. I'm not totally sold on him being the franchise quarterback, but there's a lot of young pieces in Atlanta that it can make them into something special here very soon. But I'm very happy for Bijan. I think it's a great fit. Last year, the Falcons, yes, they were kind of towards the bottom in terms of rushing yards per game, but one of their star players, I think it's Tyler Algier, he rushed for over 1,000 yards as a rookie. So you have that guy as a 1,000-yard rusher as a rookie, and then you put in a Bijan Robinson, who's also an elite pass catcher as a running back. The Atlanta Falcons offense is going to be pretty fun to watch next season. Now, in terms of running back and how the position has evolved, you can get running backs anywhere in the NFL. But the thing that makes Bijan such a great player is, like I said, his ability to catch out of the backfield. And you can put him at slot receiver. You can put him anywhere. He is the ultimate Swiss Army knife of a player. And I think that's why he was rated so high, and that's why he went into the top 10. If this was a draft 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe we're talking about Bijan Robinson possibly going number 1 overall. But you also have to think about team fit. The Carolina Panthers, they had the number 1 overall pick. They absolutely needed a quarterback. I think Bijan would have been great in Carolina, but Bryce Young was a safe pick for the Carolina Panthers. But at the end of the day, I'm just very happy that Bijan is able to say that he's a top 10 pick. And I don't care what he does as an NFL player. He's already been successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think we're all just happy that we were fortunate enough to see him play in high school, and then obviously see him get drafted. I think we all concur best player we've seen come out of Tucson. Justin, I'm going to go off the board just slightly on this topic and ask you how the experience was at the draft this year in Kansas City, because I've covered lots of drafts in New York. But now that they have this format where they're going all over Nashville last year, I think it was this year with Kansas City, how was that to cover? It seemed like a lot of fun, like a big party.
It was so much fun. And I think it was actually the most attended draft of all time, if I'm not mistaken. I saw like 312,000 people ended up going to the NFL draft, which is absolutely insane. And Kansas City, they rocked out, man. They had a great party, great barbecue. Gates Barbecue is my favorite place out there, by the way. Just amazing barbecue sandwiches.
It's
burnt ends. Oh my goodness, you can't go wrong with burnt ends. But it was a party for sure. And the way that it was set up is they had all the media watching in a hotel room connected, or like a hotel bar room connected to the draft center. And they announced the pick, and they would bring all the picks over to us. And I waited around to talk to Bijan Robinson for about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, because they brought him over, and then they're doing kind of like this media car wash thing where he's going to all these different podcasts and YouTube shows, and just one after another going and doing all these interviews. And I'm like, I can't imagine being Bijan Robinson. I know you're happy because your life has changed. You're about to make millions of dollars. You're playing football for a career, and you're making a lot of money doing it. Like, your whole life has changed at that moment. But I just can't imagine how exhausting it was for Bijan having to go and do all these interviews and say, like, yeah, it's great to be the number 8 overall pick by the Atlanta Falcons. I can't wait to get to work, and just say pretty much the same thing over and over again. But it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of drama, as we all know, with the Arizona Cardinals trading their pick and the Houston Texans getting that number 2 and number 3 overall pick. And it was a lot of gasping, a lot of oohs and ahs, but there was a lot of celebration and a lot of happy tears. And, being there with Bijan Robinson's family and seeing his grandparents there, seeing his parents and his siblings, it was a very special moment, something I'll never forget.
Yeah, he's a high character guy. I think that helped his draft stock as well. Justin, looks like the Phoenix Suns are in trouble here. Down 2-0. They're going to either have to win 4 games in a row against the Nuggets or a game 7 on the road. Plus, we have what we had feared the whole time, which is our first injury, Chris Paul with a groin. You think the Suns can come back in this series at all, or do you think they're toast?
They are toast. It's done. They're a team that has the opportunity to go all in next year if they get the right pieces and they build around Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton.
Justin, you could say, well, they only had 8 games with him in the regular season, but they won all 8 games with him in the regular season. Kevin Durant, I'm talking about.
And my biggest concern, and Jason, you and I have had many conversations about this, and this is where you're going to appreciate my growth as a pundit, Jason.
We always thought you were good.
No. But you'll appreciate this, Jason.
All right.
I'm not very happy with DeAndre Ayton. I'm not very happy with.
Well, he did better in game 2, than 1. But he, it's funny when the announcers talk about the Suns, they talk about a big 3, as in Durant, Paul, and Booker. Ayton's almost like a role player now. This guy was the number 1 pick overall in the draft. But let's hear why you're not happy with him. Go ahead.
Well, the one particular play that's actually gone viral, I'm sure you guys have seen it, where Nikola Jokic is around the basket and there's a loose ball and guys are fighting for it. And DeAndre Ayton's just kind of sitting there watching, just allowing these guys to go after the loose ball. And it's like, listen, man, this is the NBA playoffs. Every possession matters. You have to fight for these loose balls. Look at the Golden State Sacramento series. Look at what happened in game 7. Steph Curry scoring 50 points. That was a big reason why they won. But you know what was also a big factor in that game? Kayvon Looney, 21 rebounds. Those extra possessions that he was able to get for Golden State paid off big time in that second half. And DeAndre Ayton, I'm looking at that motor. I'm like, dude, we've seen you play in college. We saw you play at the U of A. We all thought you were the next coming of Hakeem Olajuwon. At least the guy who was going to be
about his motor then. I remember those Sean Miller news conferences. People were bringing it up.
Yeah, but even then, like I didn't get it then because he was just dominating so many players. But that's the thing is when you get to the NBA, there's a big difference going up against the big from Cal than Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, let me interject something here. As much as we want to bash DeAndre Ayton, and that's all well and good, that's not why they're losing this series. He's not the reason they're losing this series because their bench is terrible.
Yeah,
they traded away too much to get Kevin Durant. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have done it, But you're right. I think, Justin, they've got to work on that bench in this offseason. They've got to kind of retool themselves to be just a little bit better when DeAndre Ayton gets in a little bit of foul trouble, when Durant has to sit because maybe he gets in a little bit of foul trouble like last night. They had nothing. I mean, that's when they lost the game, was when they got in foul trouble last night.
And when you get into foul trouble, you have to rely on others to step up. And I felt really bad for Monty Williams because he was put in a really tough situation. You had DeAndre Ayton getting his fourth foul. He's over there sitting on the bench, and Kevin Durant picks up his fourth foul, I think the third quarter. And KD's looking at Monty like, what do you want to do? And Monty's like, I'm going to keep you out there because what else am I going to do? And even though that he was dealing with foul trouble, he wasn't shooting the ball that well. I mean, he was 10 for 27 from the field. And I think the Phoenix Suns also could have done a better job of getting to the free throw line. Only shooting 5 free throws. I know that some of these calls weren't going your way, but man, how many times are the Phoenix Suns going to continue to complain about the free throw disparity when they're not doing anything about it? They're not playing aggressive at drawing contact and getting to the free throw line. They're settling for a lot of lazy mid-range jumpers and a lot of bad shots. And it's showing.
You got to force it. You got to force the issue. That's how you get fouls. Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, Justin, I figured we'd finish it off here with a difficult topic. Certainly, you look at the layoffs as the economy kind of cools or normalizes, however you want to talk about it right now. Certainly with the big boys here with ESPN, it looks like they're doing it in 3, and the talent's going to be this summer. Certainly, you were wrote an impassioned tweet with the Arizona Daily Star. Certainly, we're seeing in local TV news, a station in Medford, Oregon, is closing up shop. Anything that you want to say about what's going on at the Daily Star? I know it's kind of newspapers in general, not so much them, but certainly bad, for them, and we're seeing it in TV. Any thoughts here on the ESPN layoffs? And my thought, I'll lead you with this, is if ESPN is going to do it, just do it all at once. I don't know why they have to do it in 3s and why they have to make some of their on-air talent squirm and wonder who it's going to be between now and June when they do this next round.
It's terrible. And if I'm not mistaken, it's 7,000 jobs have been affected by this at ESPN. 7,000.
I don't know if it's 7,000 at ESPN or 7,000 at Disney. But either way, it's still, it could be ESPN. I'm not sure, but either way, it's not fantastic.
It's not good at all. It's a rough time in our industry, and it's always adapting or it's always changing. And we have to do a really great job of adapting to this market. And I'm trying the best that I can. And, the big reason why, I did film or TV, print, and radio when I was in college is because I knew you're going to have to be able to do all 3 of them. You're going to have to be a jack of all trades. You can't really just pigeonhole yourself to one specific topic. So I do the best that I can to keep up with the times and adapt to the current state of our industry. And, with the Arizona Daily Star, it's so rough because we have people get laid off who've been there for decades, who have dedicated so many hours of their lives, years of their lives to the brand, and to get let go like that, it's very unfortunate. And, we've been told, it's cost complications, and to hear that, it's very disheartening and very discouraging as my ring light goes off. But it's a tough time in our industry, and, jobs are getting cut, and a lot of us are expected to continue to pick up the slack and continue to work as if nothing is going on, and we pick up more of the work. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this last week, after seeing everything that went on with my colleagues at the Arizona Daily Star, I got, I don't use this word lightly, but I got a little bit depressed. It was really hard to be in Kansas City covering the NFL draft while everyone back home in Tucson was dealing with significant change at the Arizona Daily Star. It was really hard for me to compartmentalize the draft and what was going on with my family at the Arizona Daily Star. And my heart goes out to everyone who's been affected by this. I'm very thankful that I still get to be a part of the Arizona Daily Star. It's a paper that I grew up reading. Every single morning, I would crack open the sports section and read what Greg Hansen had to say, or, read what Bruce Pascoe had to say. These are the guys that I work with now. These are guys who I grew up reading. and I'm honored to get to work alongside these guys. It's an honor, but man, it's also a very scary time right now in our industry, and I'm just doing the best I can and do the best job that I can to continue to provide content, not only for the Star, but for the city of Tucson, because at the end of the day, this is the city I grew up in. And if I could be that source of information, then I'm going to do the best that I can.
Yeah, and well, you obviously our sympathies to those who lost their jobs at the Star, and we're going through tough times, as you know, as well in the TV industry. And we kind of kid, but you look back 5 years ago, and who would have thought that Jason and I was sitting here talking to you, Justin, doing a streaming show, and that most of our news is now digested by people watching streaming services. People watch maybe one newscast a week over the air, and the rest of the time they're on their phone, they're on their app. And I'll be honest, I haven't gotten the Daily Star printed for a few years, but I have the app, and I that's how I get your content is online and with the app. I guess things are just changing, and we have to keep up with the times. I saw that Lee Enterprises was talking about one of the papers in Montana, I think, is going to go to only 3 days a week of publishing. It's hard to say what the future is going to be. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but it certainly isn't like anything we could even imagine, I suppose.
Well, and it's really hard because, Tucson, Arizona, it's a community that has a lot of older people in it. A lot of people come down and spend the final years of their lives in Tucson or in Green Valley because it's warm year round. They can play golf and be comfortable for their latter years of their life. So a lot of people still read the newspaper, but again, like you said, the times are changing and everything is now all on your phone or your iPad, and trying to get people to convert to that has certainly been a challenge. And we don't print out of Tucson anymore. I don't know if you guys know this, but we print out of North Phoenix.
No, I know. Yeah.
Yep.
And because we print out of North Phoenix, our deadlines are much tighter now. I got to turn in stories, 4 hours before I had to when I first started at the Arizona Daily Star. So it's a really a grind. Unfortunately, there's those late night stories that come in where you're unable to get it into the newspaper. But hey, we got all that stuff online at Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. We're a little shorthanded right now, but we like to be a good source of information here in Tucson, Arizona, and we like to serve the community, and that's what I'm going to do.
Justin, hang in there. Well said by you for sure. And thanks for sharing those thoughts. And that was nicely put. We're up against the bottom of the hour here, so we'll leave it at that. But cool. Thanks for a few minutes here talking a bunch of things on the Huddle here with Pat and myself. And we'll see you out there and at sporting events and back here on the show in the future. So we thank you so much. Of course, you can listen to Justin on Spears and Ali, ESPN Radio in the mornings, and read his work on the Arizona Daily Star as well. So Justin Spears, thanks so much for a few minutes here.
See you guys at the Sugar Skulls game.
That's right.
Thanks,
that's right.
Justin. All right. We'll see you.
That's right. Yeah, boy, that's when you use that D word, Pat, that's what it's like. And, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about it. You didn't either. So that's why I kind of led into it with, well, you could talk about that or, ESPN, which is guys making millions. Not that makes it that much better, but that was interesting to hear him say that. And so yeah.
It's a changing world, Jason. I just think, we don't have a crystal ball. You just got, as he said, you just keep taking on more work and you just keep doing what you want to do to get the information out to the people of your community.
We got to go here in a quick minute, but if you ever look at videos on YouTube where it's like New York City in the 1930s or 20s or the teens or whatever, and they show people walking down the street, they've all got a newspaper on their arm, which is interesting.
Yep.
All right. Terrific. Pat, it's the bottom of the hour, so we're going to leave it at that. This has been the Huddle on KGUN 9 Streaming Sports, all of our devices and apps that we've been talking about. Thanks so much for joining us. For Pat Paris, I'm Jason Barr. We'll see you next time.